look at functional medicine and we compare it to like conventional medicine, the biggest problem with conventional medicine and research is they're comparing one variable at a time. So what does that mean? You have this health issue, high blood pressure. I'm going to just change one variable. What's that variable? Here's a blood pressure medication. It's an ARB, it's an ACE inhibitor, it's a hydrochlorothiazide water pill. This is the only intervention. And look, we see this drop in physiology, i.e., your blood pressure is dropping. That's the only thing that conventional medicine looks at, and they're able to isolate variables. The problem with that is in functional medicine land, when you see a patient, you're just by getting them hydrated, adding some electrolytes to their water, working on them getting to bed a little bit more, regulating their cortisol rhythm, getting some nutrient deficiencies addressed, getting their fatty acid profile better. Now they're going to be eating more anti-inflammatory fats, healthy grass-fed meats, fish oil, and less nut and seed-based oils. Now we're going to add in some selenium. Maybe they were doing higher dose iodine. Maybe they had dysbiosis. Maybe there's some toxicity or mold. So you can see in the functional medicine world, there's so many levers that we're pulling that when conventional medicine comes in and says, hey, we're going to just see, does this one intervention of cutting out wheat, barley, and rye make the difference? Well, the problem is in functional medicine world, we are lining up a diet that's way more broad spectrum and consistent, that has nutrient density, anti-inflammatory, low toxin, and we're leaning on all these other variables: blood sugar, nutrients, selenium, zinc, magnesium, fixing dysbiosis, fixing cortisol imbalances, fixing sleep issues, fixing hydration, fixing electrolytes. And this is part of the reason why when you go look at a study, oh, this thing didn't do that. Well, I mean, in the real world, it would take a decade to run a study just isolating every single variable I just did. And that's the problem with science. It's really meant for patentable drug research. Now, that being said, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have double-blind, placebo-controlled studies. I think case studies are better, where it's like, hey, you work with these patients, you made all these different changes, and this is the outcome, right? And you just report the patient's outcome. I think those are better because it allows you to put information out into the clinical research, and people can talk about, hey, these are the outcomes that are happening. But with double-blind, placebo-control type of studies, functional medicine does not work best with it because we're loading so many inputs into the system and we can't isolate them. So big recap out of the gates: gluten-free diets can still be a crappy diet. Newsflash, right? You still got to look at blood sugar issues, dysglycemia. You have to look at anti-inflammatory, nutrient density. Got to look at selenium. Got to look at zinc. Got to make sure your blood sugar is not wonky. Got to look at vitamin D. Got to look at precursors to glutathione. Got to look at magnesium. Got to look at sleep. Gut plays a major role because gluten, I think the major mechanism of how it impacts the thyroid, that's why there's 5 to 8x more people with Hashimoto's that also have celiac than the average person in the population. That means something. I think the big mechanism that I see with gluten in general, even non-celiac gluten sensitivity, is there's this gut permeability thing. When you increase gut permeability, leaky gut occurs. That's part of the whole process. The tight junctions open up. Food and endotoxin, now mycotoxins, get into the bloodstream. That aggravates the immune system.